but it's easy to clean out with a post hole digger. This is a 9-inch hole, so it's just barely big enough for the post hole digger. So I'll scrape the dirt back, clean the hole out. This is about from here, 18, 27, 36. So if you count the tip, it'll be easy, 36 inches. These ones back here and the ones behind are going to be buried under almost 8 feet of dirt, so I'm not worried about frost heave at all. I'm a little bit worried about frost heave on this one. But I might go ahead and put my wall out here so that it's always warm inside here, so that there shouldn't be much frost heave. And but I'll go ahead and make sure this one's 36 inches for sure. The others, I mean, if they're 30, that's fine, that's deep enough. I want them deeper than 24 though. So these front ones that might be exposed a little bit to frost heave, I'm going to go ahead and make them a full 36 inches for sure. Okay, cool. Okay, so that took all of about 10 minutes to dig the holes, which is nice. And so now it's going to take an hour or two just to get them all prepped and cleaned out, because I got to pull all the dirt back, dig the dirt out with a post hole digger, and then pile the dirt somewhere. I'll go ahead and put the loader on the front of the tractor for that. And what else? So these posts are going to be important here because I'm going to have a wall here, and just in case all these tire wires break, which is very unlikely, then this wall will be here to contain it. And I'll go ahead and do it on the back here, even though this probably doesn't need it, because I'm going to have a dirt bank up against it that's 8 feet tall. So even if all these wires do break, they're not gonna, the tires aren't going to be able to push out or go anywhere really. So but I want this to stand for a long time, so that's the thing. I want it to stand for 50 years. I want it to be fine for, and it might even be good for longer than that if the front face gets rebuilt. So and then I'm going to, of course, these are all pressure treated lumber, and I'm going to cover all that with a moisture barrier all the way over the top, all the way over the back, all the way down to the ground, so that moisture won't get into them. And then of course they'll be covered up with dirt, so they won't get any sun won't break them down, moisture won't break them down, and they'll just be in the dark forever. And with a moisture barrier over it, they should last a long time. And being pressure treated, they should last even longer than regular wood. So okay, good. So my buddy was right, Glenn, you were right. It's taken 2 bags. These are 9-inch holes and they're about 30 inches deep, 32 inches deep. So it's taken 2 bags with a 4x4 post in them down the middle. And it's just leaving me a little bit of a crown. So I'm glad you said that because I bought more and I'm going to use it. So thank you for that. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Okay, I just had to document this for myself for when I'm pouring concrete later to remember this. I've always picked up the concrete bag, set it on the edge right here, the mixer, reached inside, cut it with a knife, tried to cut through 3 or 4 layers of paper. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4, depending on where you're cutting. And then my knife falls on the ground, then I got to bend over and get it, and I mean, it's just constant. And so what I'm doing now instead is I'm picking up the bag of concrete and just orienting this paddle right here down, and then as I pick it up I just slide the bag in and let the bag catch on this, and it just rips the bag as I push the bag in, and then I just reach around with my hand, grab the rent, rip it up on one side, and then pretty much just pull the bag out and all the concrete falls inside. So I gotta say this is way easier just using that. So alright, so we're going to talk about containment, different levels of containment. People talk about the tire bales possibly coming out or coming apart, like all these metal wires breaking. So I'm not personally too worried about that, but I thought I'd take an extra measure at least to try to contain them should that happen. Now, starting with these middle bales, if they cut loose, the tires are going to expand this way, side to side. They're not going to expand this way or that way, if that makes sense, because they don't grow that way. They're actually going to get smaller that way, if anything, if the tires do expand, just because when they're crushed, they go like that. And when they would go back to normal, they would go back like this. Does that make sense? So, if anything, they'd squeeze in on the ends here. But as far as side to side goes, if this one cuts loose, it's just not going to go anywhere. If that one cuts loose, it's not going to go anywhere. If this one cuts loose, it's not going to go anywhere that direction. It's going to try to push this direction. So this bracing with these 4x4 posts and 30 inches of concrete on each end, that's going to be secondary containment. So we'll have primary, secondary, and tertiary containment. This is primary containment. These wires here, these supports on the end will be secondary containment, and the tertiary containment, of course, will be dirt pile up against this on the back side, on the ends. We'll have dirt piled up around here. The only place we won't have tertiary containment is on these end walls here. Okay, so we will have secondary containment though with these posts here. There's posts there as well on that end wall. All right. So here's another view starting at the bottom, and that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so I just used 16 inches by 4 feet on each end, screwed them to the tires, put some bracing in. I know this doesn't have really lateral bracing like this, but I think once I get dirt piled in there around plastic and styrofoam and that compacted in there, that there's not going to be much shifting of it any direction. So here's the secondary containment on this wall, on the end wall here, and I just cut 4x4s. These are extra 4x4 pressure treated that I have left over. Of course I didn't need to use pressure treated, but and then I just reinforced them with some 2x4s on the inside here. I started to use the metal bracing everywhere like this, and that would probably would have worked fine, but I don't think it has as much lateral support as something like this does, because that will twist and give some for sure. So I just used it in a couple places, like right there and right there. Besides, those are like $7 at my local hardware store, which is a little ridiculous. That would add up quick. And this is what the side view looks like. Right there. Okay. And I didn't put 2 posts on this end here like I was planning, because I pushed this tire wall out a little bit to make it a little bit wider inside here. So it's actually 22 feet wide instead of 20 feet wide. So this tire bale wall here, or this tire bale section here, actually sticks out about 12-14 inches or so. Okay, so what I'm going to do with that instead, I'm still going to run a cable from here. I'm just going to wrap it all the way around, down around, kind of underneath, right along that edge and back to this post. And I'll put the turnbuckle right here so I can tighten it down. And that'll at least contain the tires from expanding that way or that way on this outer part. And on the inner part, of course, I'll put a cable from that post right there over to this one right here, straight over, and that'll tie those together. Okay, good. I'm going to start working on the cables next, but I've also got to be thinking about the bond beam. I'm not going to cut these posts off here. I'm going to leave them long until I get the bond beam poured, probably just in case I need them for something like a string level or whatever. So I did put a string level on here. You can see this pink string. Hopefully it's coming out on the camera along the top here. There's my string level right there. It's perfectly in the middle. You can see that I might have 8 inches or so there. It goes down to maybe 3 or 4 there. Maybe as high as 7 or 8 there. So I've got definitely some variability, which I knew I would have. It's not as bad as I thought it would be though. So I'm going to raise my string up a little bit higher so I make sure I have at least a minimum of 6 inches. And then I'll go ahead and build my forms, and then we'll get the bond beam poured. Okay, hope this will come out okay. I have some red lines here that I painted on to where I'm going to line my forms up. Just ignore that for now. But what we did for the cables, you can see the cable goes through there and goes all the way across here to the other one over there. This is secondary containment. There's the turnbuckle. And I'm going to keep kind of working on these and tightening them down. Use stainless steel wire rope clips. These are pretty heavy duty. I was able to crank on them with a little impact wrench, and as well as checking them by hand with the 3/8 drive ratchet. And I might come back. I've ordered a bunch more. I'm going to probably come back and put double these everywhere just to make sure they stay nice and tight. And of course there's a turnbuckle right down here for this one. And so I was able to snug these up, and the goal isn't to compress the tires. The goal is just to get these boards right here pressed up against the tires so that if all these wires do pop loose and the tires do try to press out, they just sit there. They don't go anywhere. Okay. So, and on the back side, I just put a washer. I put a little loop, and then I put a wire rope clamp. Okay. So, like I said in the previous video, this one here for this front wall, this will only get secondary containment. This won't have any tertiary containment by dirt. This will only be secondary containment with these cables. So this cable goes back here across to this post. There's a turnbuckle on the back side of the post. And then this one right here, the wire comes off, goes down. I don't know if you can see the turnbuckle there. There it is. And the wire goes down underneath the tires, right along the edge of the tires as tight as I can get them. And then it's bolted in the same fashion to the bottom. Actually, I wrapped it around the post. You can see it down there. I wrapped it around that post down there. So, so this seems pretty good for secondary containment. I'm not unhappy with this. I think this will take care of it. If all the wires break, the tires will still sit there. They won't try to press out that direction. If they do, they'll have all this pulling against it. So they'll probably they should just sit there. That's the theory anyway. There's no, I can't find anything really on how to contain these online or from people that I've talked to. This came as a recommendation from the tire recycler and what his recommendation was to do some extra containment if I felt like it was necessary. So same thing here, we did the same thing here. This wire goes back to this post. This wire here comes back, wraps around, there's a turnbuckle down there somewhere, there it is, and then it comes back around to the bottom of the post down here. So that'll contain all these tires here. I'm not going to put any out here or there because this will all be just wing wall, what the Earthship community calls a wing wall. Intership Biotexture, they built a wing wall out of rammed earth tires so that they can pile dirt right up against here and have it all the way up to the ceiling or all the way up to the roof here without it spilling over this way, and be able to have a flat wall here so that you can have a doorway right here. And that wing wall, the whole purpose of the wing wall is just to contain the dirt back here. And so that's all this is going to be, as a wing wall. And so if all these do, this will still be covered in plastic and protected from the dirt and the moisture, so that even if all these do break someday, these lower ones at least will just push against the dirt, or they might even spring out a little bit. I think worst case, they'll spring out and then they'll just sit there, and then I'll backfill it with dirt if I need to, if it makes a little hole in the top. I'm not worried about that at all. That's not structural, that's just to contain dirt. So